in their local community, and then understanding that no matter how great we are locally, we are better together. And so understand that the wider context of Africa becomes a constraint or a limitation to whatever great things you are doing in your local community or local area. And so the whole idea of Elevate Africa was born. And if you see our website, we say, we elevate Africa, because it's what we do collectively as a whole. And so we've seen that while there are many builders on the continent, there are very few binders on the continent. And so we chose to play in the binder space. So how we see ourselves as orchestrators, as architects, as binders, as bridge, and as a catalyst for what Africa's next chapter will see. And we've also seen that storytelling and narrative transforms can be an interesting tool or useful tool for systems change. And we said, well, how do we pull these actors together and unlock this thing that we've always called the great African potential? We deal in three major pillars. The first is on governance and leadership, because we believe that our leaders at different levels of leadership help us to define a strong vision, a compelling vision for others to follow. And they are the primary ambassadors of our brand as a people, because they must model the way, they must actively mentor the next generation, and they must shape how the future is seen, perceived, and received. So we said, look, it's important that we engage meaningfully with regards to leadership and governance. The second is investment and trade. And you may add innovation there as well. Is that when we trade together, it brings communities together and shows that economies and enterprises are sustainable. And the last part of our pillar is culture and heritage. This speaks to our history, our stories, our literature, our poetry, our philosophy, our music, our food, our fashion, and all of these things define who we are and give us a sense of pride and identity as a people. And what pulls all of this together? It's how we articulate for ourselves and for the world this unique value that we have and that we bring every time we engage locally and internationally. So that's what we are about. And the reason for this platform, which we have with our convening, is that our hope and ambition is to make Africa smaller, so that through these engagements, you can say, I have a brother in Egypt, I have a brother in Kenya, a sister in Lusaka, like I have a mommy here in Botswana. She's seated right there, right? So, you know, we become one big family. It's easier to trade with friends, right? So that's what this is all about. In fact, while I was, we were just at the reception, two friends came from different countries, leaders in their countries, and their presidents had discussed about having a meeting on something to unlock potential in both countries. And they concretized it there, and that meeting with both presidents will happen in a couple of weeks. And that happened just downstairs, right? So this is what this is about. In the next 2 days, we'll be having conversations. The idea is to move conversations to action. We believe that when we see all the activities that we do, we tell ourselves that everything is a stage. We have the set, we have the cast, we have our script, and then we put on our show, and we ensure that we capture it, we curate it, we capture it, and we communicate it. And you all are part of this cast, right? So we're looking forward to a great time here. Please make friends. We hope that the levels of excellence that may be shown in the next 2 days can be inspiring. If there are gaps, forgive us, for indeed there will be. And in the spirit of Ubuntu, I would like to say to everyone, welcome as we move towards elevating Africa together. Thank you so much.
Africa has always been a story of resilience, of breaking, and of rebuilding. A story the world has often misread, misunderstood, misrepresented, and misplaced for centuries. But every story has a turning point, and this moment is ours. We call it Africa, the next chapter. Not a footnote in someone else's narrative, not an appendix to another continent's tale, but the next chapter. Bold, unapologetic, and unmistakably ours. And here's the truth. This chapter will not be written for us. It'll be written by us. And that is why Botswana matters. She's not just a location on the map. She's a symbol, a nation that has turned diamonds into discipline, that chose stability over spectacle, that have proven to the world that Africa is not an experiment, but a land overflowing with possibilities. On the 30th and 31st of October 2025, we gather a convergence of authors of technology pushing the boundaries of innovation, authors of culture reclaiming and redefining identity, authors of leadership and governance charting new pathways for nations, authors of heritage guarding the climates and wisdom of our ancestors while shaping the legacy of tomorrow. Because the world does not need more readers of Africa's past. It needs writers of the future. And the pen is in our hands. The ink is our ideas. The pages are before us. This is Africa. This is the next chapter. And it begins now.
It is my singular honor to welcome our founder, my principal, Her Majesty Olori Atuashe III, the Queen Consort of the Warri Kingdom, for her remarks.
Ladies and gentlemen, we introduce Her Majesty Olori Atuashe III, the Queen Consort of the Warri Kingdom, co-founder of Elevate Africa and the founder of the Royal Iwere Foundation. Her Majesty also serves on the High-Level Advisory Committee on the Nigerian Federal Government's Women's Economic Empowerment and Gender, and remains a passionate advocate for girls' education and women's empowerment. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the principal of this convening, Her Majesty Olori Atuashe III, Queen Consort of the Warri Kingdom.
Dumelang, Botswana. Where I'm from, we say Ajadede Mukiao. And to welcome all, welcome my friends. Before I continue, it is my greatest honor and opportunity to recognize, for me, the greatest person in the room. I get the opportunity to call him husband. He is my king, my leader, an example of visionary leadership and stewardship. His Majesty Ogiame Atuashe III, the Olu of Warri. Ogiame Suo Baba. It is my honor to be here with you today in this beautiful nation. And I'd like to recognize, and I'm deeply honored by the President of Botswana, President Duma Boko, who is represented by the Honorable Minister of Local Government and Traditional Affairs, who I believe is still on the way. I believe that your presence and your partnership underscores Botswana's commitment to continental vision. I thank you for your presence. The power of women's leadership shines brightly in this room. We have with us the first female president of Mauritius, Her Excellency Amina Gurib Fakim, and the former president of Malawi, Her Excellency Joyce Banda, ably represented by Ms. Salamatu Yaradua. Your groundbreaking leadership continues to inspire a new generation across Africa. Please allow me to stand on existing protocol. I know many of you might be wondering, what is a Nigerian monarch from West Africa doing organizing a conference in Botswana? Hey, we might as well address the elephant in the room. The answer lies in a fundamental truth, and I said it last year at the first inaugural convening. The truth is, nations need nations to thrive. We have become a global village. If what happens in America or China, and a lot has happened over the last year, affects the economy of African nations, then how much more what happens in one African nation affecting another African nation? When Nigeria refinery starts producing at home, fuel prices shift from Benin to Cameroon. We just got breaking news that our president has approved a 15% tariff on local oil, and I see how that's going to affect the dollar in a very short time, actually. Or when our government decided to invest in Nollywood and the creative economy, it sparked growth across African cinema, across Ghana, across South Africa, and Kenya. Or when Rwanda took the first step towards environmental cleanliness by banning the use of plastic bags, Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda adopted similar bans and restrictions. When Ethiopia builds a dam, it doesn't just light up Addis Ababa, it powers possibilities across borders. And it's like that all over Africa. Africa, though separated by borders, is deeply interconnected in values, in culture, and in our shared humanity. Our economies breathe together. Our futures are deeply intertwined. So African nations and the African diaspora, it is time for us to come together to trust one another and to co-create Africa, the next chapter. So to that question, what is a Nigerian monarch doing in Botswana? I'm going to steal a chapter or a sentence from His Majesty's book. His Majesty often says, I am an African monarch domiciled in Nigeria. To this context, I am an African queen domiciled in Africa. The very core of me is African. And so I'm here as an African to invest in the future of our people and our continent. But before I speak to that future, let me say something quickly about our past. The great empires of our past, Mali, Songhai, Kush, Benin, were each magnificent in their own right. They thrived internally because communities relied on one another and trust was the currency of progress. But their fatal flaw, they remained islands of excellence instead of forging coordinated alliances with one another. And so we glory in these empires, but we must learn from their limitation. Brilliance in isolation is not enough. It is actually a vulnerability that we can no longer afford. Africa's next chapter demands a fundamental shift in how we see ourselves and how we operate as a continent. It demands a foundation of trust. That will be the theme of my speech this morning. If you remember nothing, remember this one word, trust. Because the transformation we seek isn't just about infrastructure or policies, which we will discuss in this convening. It is about revolutionizing our collective mindset from fragmented nations to a unified force. When I say I am African, and that weight carries the same weight and commitment as any national identity, then we will begin to unlock the foundation for true continental prosperity. This mindset revolution naturally flows into everything, from breaking down physical barriers to building true connectivity that creates corridors of opportunities where ideas, goods, and services flow freely between Lagos and Lusaka as they do between Cape Town and London. At Elevate Africa, we exist to serve as a bridge between our nations, our people, and our possibilities. For us, Africa the Next Chapter is more than just a tagline. It is our vision of Africa, building the future on its own terms. And we deliberately chose to write this chapter here in Botswana, because Botswana is where quiet competence has met continental ambition, where excellence and intentional progress are not just preached, but are practiced. Feel free to please give a round of applause to our host country. I'd like to thank the government of Botswana for its incredible support from the moment we envisioned location for this year's convening. You embody the very spirit of Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, last year we outlined the Africa we see, an Africa where trust ignites collaboration and where collaboration supercharges progress. And we committed to spotlighting and scaling these solutions and stories of that Africa. In Abuja, I stood before you with a vision. In Gaborone, I consistently shifted the narrative towards ownership, rallying creatives and financiers so that African stories are made, distributed, and monetized by us Africans. But perhaps our boldest move was launching the Elevate Africa Fellowship, one of the continent's most inclusive and robust, taught how to lead. They were already leading in their own right. What we did was we created a space for them to amplify their impact, to weave narrative transformation into system change in a way that projects their work to the world. Over these 9 months, I've seen the African spirit of trust, friendship, and collaboration come alive among our fellows. I've watched as strangers have become partners and as healthy competition have sharpened excellence. They have survived 9 months of intensive work and much travel, learning across the continent, and have become a true microcosm of the Africa we see, an Africa where humility leads, trust builds, and collaboration upscales. At this point, may I ask our Elevate Africa Fellows who are here to please stand up. Thank you for clapping for them already. I said this yesterday at lunch, and I'll say it again in front of our audience. Out of the many things that we've done this year and out of the many investments that we've made in the continent this year, the fellows are our greatest investment. African people remain our greatest investment. Congratulations on completing this journey, and yes, please, you may give them a round of applause. You are living proof of the Africa we envision, inclusive, collaborative, and uncompromisingly excellent. Please sit down. Ladies and gentlemen, beyond the individual empowerment of the fellows, their 9 months of collaboration offer a vision of what becomes possible when Africans trust each other across borders, when we move from suspicion to synergy, from competition to co-creation. Trust is the bedrock for growth. Our ancestors understood this in their communities. However, between their empires, suspicion, competition, and eventually, like I mentioned earlier, vulnerability. We cannot afford to repeat history in this era of geopolitical transition. Let me reiterate, Africa's next chapter must be built on the foundations of trust. Governments must trust its people. The people must trust their governments. Nations must trust nations. Without this trust, we will continue to work in silos. And without coordination, we will continue to duplicate efforts. And who bears the brunt of this cost? Our people. For too long across our continent, millions have still waited for basic services, paid premium prices for intercontinental travel and trade, For those of us that came from Nigeria, it took us an average of 26 hours to journey a 7-hour flight, if made direct, if trust was working for us. Many of our people have watched their creative work enrich others and seen their talents underutilized. But the advancement made here today will change everything, I believe. Let me share some groundbreaking things that many thought would take years for Africa to achieve. Nigeria refined petrol at home and sold to the United States. Namibia swore in a woman as president and appointed a female as vice president, and has, I believe, over 50% of a female cabinet. One of Namibia's is here represented. I see you, Governor Kadiva. COMESA advanced local currency trade across its member states. If that sounds like the future arriving early, you're right. Governments are strengthening systems across our continent. Rwanda has built one of the world's most efficient e-governments. Botswana continues to set benchmarks in governance and financial and fiscal stability. Ghana and Senegal, yes please. Yes please. Ghana and Senegal have shown smooth democratic transitions. And African excellence isn't only making a difference at home. You walk into a boutique in Paris or London and you will hear Afrobeats and I'm a piano, or you see a runway in Los Angeles and you are sure to see an outfit sketched in Accra or in Lagos. And this isn't just for applause or for the nod. It's the rails beneath it that we need to pay attention to. The distribution is finally catching up with creation, and protection catching up with distribution, so that value is paid at source and creative work sustains studios at home. From technology to energy, creativity and beyond, much of the momentum is driven by young Africans. With the median age of under 20 and the AFCTA opening a 1.4 billion person market, our youth demographic is undoubtedly not just a statistic, it is our added and undeniable advantage. From private innovation to public governance, these advances across sectors prove one thing: African excellence is in abundance. And we're going to see even greater things when these strengths combine at scale, when trust enables collaboration, because our continent does not need permission to be exceptional, we already are. We need coordination and collaboration to be unstoppable. That is where all leaders, myself, change makers, creatives come in. That is where Elevate Africa's intentional platforms for connection become essential. When His Majesty and I founded Elevate Africa, some people thought we were idealistic. Other people called us ambitious. Another conference, they asked. But we aren't just gathering people to have conversation. We were given a mandate, and that mandate was to elevate Africa. And with that mandate, we are building a movement, and every movement needs collaborative effort. I've learned that movements require the patience that Botswana will teach, and the audacious nature that Nigeria will bring, the innovation that Kenya sparks, and the resilience our Caribbean diaspora have mastered. Movements need all the different attributes so wonderfully displayed by every part of our African family. Elevate Africa's role here then is to broker alignment where it matters most, between policy, capital, and culture, between the builders and the systems that help them scale. We convene not just to talk, but to connect people. We equip to strengthen capacity, and we broadcast to shift the narrative from potential to proof. Since Abuja, that approach has been tested and it holds. It has led us to Africa, the next chapter. Over the next 2 days, we will listen to talks and work across 3 different strands: leadership, trade and investment, and culture, because each touches the lives of every African. Leadership sets the rules and trust that make services possible. Trade and investment organize capital and markets where livelihoods are built, culture because it shapes our very identity, our sense of belonging and our reputation, and ultimately demand. Still, ladies and gentlemen, the true measure of our success here will not be with what we discuss, but with what we deliver after here. And that's why this convening will culminate with the unveiling of the Gaborone Communique, a co-authored pact that will codify our shared continental vision and will serve as our compass until we meet again. So I welcome you all to engage in the conversations that will mature into commitments so that together we will proclaim that Africa's next chapter is not just bright, it is brilliantly intentional. And when the world reads our next chapter, may it be said that Africa dared to trust, Africa dared to believe together, Africa dared to write together, and Africa built together. Welcome to the next chapter. Pula!
Round of applause. Another round of applause to Her Majesty the Queen. Deeply inspired, deeply moved, mandate received. Africa dared to build together. That's the mandate. Your Majesty, I'm particularly moved by the fact that you are imploring us to begin to think about trust differently. Have you ever considered trust as a tool for economic prosperity? Have you ever thought about trust as a system or an ecosystem that ensures that sustainable development happens in this continent? Have you considered, and these are the thoughts that came to my mind as Her Majesty was speaking, was that, for instance, for Africa to build interoperable systems for payments across borders, that's trust, right? Trust has to fuel that. For women cross borders and young people who are cross-border traders to trade between Zimbabwe and Botswana and South Africa and Nigeria and Ghana and Cameroon, trust must undergird that system. And so the mandate, as I hear it coming clear to us today, is we need to consider in the next 2 days, what are the systems we need to put in place to actually build and strengthen trust amongst Africans, but also trust between Africa and her friends or her partners? What are the institutional frameworks that we need to put in place for that trust to enable us to scale? What are the systems, what are the institutions, what are the structures, and what are the actions that we need to put in place in order to build trust? I hope that just like me, you are equally inspired by our opening address. Can we again give Her Majesty a round of applause? Now I am delighted and honored to invite our next speaker, who is also going to give us a keynote, and I will introduce His Excellency, Mr. Benjamin Chesire Shebo, EGH, EBS, Governor of Baringo County in Kenya. As he rises, can we please give him a round of applause until he gets to the stage? Your Excellency,
Next
you are
up,
welcome.
from Kenya, we have a distinguished leader and public servant whose work has transformed education financing and community development in Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Honorable Governor Benjamin Chesire Cheboy, the Governor of Baringo County.
Good morning, Africa. Your Excellency, the representative of the President Duma Gideon Bihoko, the President of Botswana, His Royal Majesty Ogiame Atuwaste III, the King of Wari Kingdom of Nigeria, Her Majesty, Her Royal Majesty Olori Atuwaste III, the Queen Consort of Wari Kingdom, wonderful speaker, and great inspirer. distinguished guests, political, business, and cultural leaders present in the room, who apparently they are only ladies, policymakers, creative artists, ladies and gentlemen, future of Africa. I also commend you for choosing Botswana as the host. Botswana's remarkable example of democracy, good governance, and stability makes it an ideal venue for envisioning Africa's transformation story. Let me say this. At this particular juncture, I come from a background that has seen Africa grow from the days of independence, the days of Nandi Azikiwe, first president of Nigeria, the days of Kwame Nkrumah, first president of Nigeria, the days of Kwame Nkrumah, Jomo